Picture this: 1990. China is in the middle of one of the most dramatic economic transformations in human history. Deng Xiaoping's reforms are reshaping an entire civilization. Factories are opening everywhere. Opportunities exist for those bold enough to grab them. But in the industrial city of Baoding in Hebei province, there is a small company that nobody wants. It has 60 workers. It has mountains of debt. Its previous leader just died in a car accident. The local township government has been trying to find someone, anyone, willing to take over. They're offering a 5-year management contract. No salary guarantee, no safety net, just a broken factory and a pile of problems. Most people said no. One person said yes. His name was Wei Jianjun. He was 26 years old. He had no university degree. He had no automotive engineering background. Before this moment, his career history included working in a micro-motor factory in Beijing, working in a carpet factory, and working in a water pump factory alongside his father in his spare time. He drove a Ladada, one of the few privately owned cars in Baoding at the time, and dreamed of becoming a professional rally driver. This was not a man with a grand plan handed to him by investors or the government. This was a young man from a working family who saw a broken thing and believed he could fix it. What Wei Jianjun built over the next 3 decades would become the largest privately owned SUV manufacturer in China. A company with 5 distinct brands. A company selling vehicles in over 170 countries. A company that would eventually sit down at the same table as BMW. His personal net worth today stands at $12 billion. But on the day he walked into that factory in 1990, he had nothing but ambition and an absolute refusal to accept that things could not be better. This is the story of Wei Jianjun. And it starts not in a boardroom, not in a university, but in a dying factory in a city that nobody outside China had ever heard of. If you are new here, subscribe and hit the like button. It helps this channel more than you know. He built a metal construction company called Taihang Construction Equipment Factory, which also produced parts for water pipes and heating systems. It was a practical, unglamorous business, but it was his way. Jianjun grew up watching his father build something from nothing. That lesson never left him. The automotive chapter of this story actually begins with Wei Jianjun's uncle, Wei Diang. In 1976, Wei Diang founded a small vehicle repair workshop in Baoding, in collaboration with the local Nandanda Yuan township government. It was modest. It fixed agricultural vehicles and basic trucks. But over time, it grew. By 1984, Wei Diang had renamed it Great Wall Industry Company and began producing its own commercial vehicles, small trucks, and basic SUV-type vehicles based on existing Chinese designs. It was not sophisticated, but it was a start. Then, in 1989, everything changed. Wei Diang died in a car accident. The company he had spent over a decade building reverted to the control of the local township government. Without his leadership, Great Wall Industry began to struggle. The debts mounted. The direction disappeared. The workers were uncertain. The government needed someone to step in. And in 1990, Wei Jianjun raised his hand. He walked away from his father's company. He signed a management contract with the township government and walked into a factory carrying the weight of 60 livelihoods, a mountain of debt, and absolutely no guarantee of success. What he found inside those walls was not pretty. But what he saw in his mind was something completely different. The first thing Wei Jianjun did when he took over Great Wall was something that would define Chinese manufacturing for an entire generation. He studied everything. He took apart vehicles. He hired engineers and mechanics and sat with them on the factory floor, learning how cars were actually built. He had no formal automotive training, so he created his own curriculum. By 1993, Great Wall was producing passenger cars. And here is where the story gets complicated. Some of those early models bore a strong resemblance to well-known Japanese vehicles. There was a model that looked very similar to the Nissan Cedric, another that echoed the Toyota Crown. This is a part of Great Wall's history that does not appear in the official company biography, but it happened. And it was not unique to Great Wall. It was how an entire generation of Chinese manufacturers learned to make cars. You study what works, you build it, you understand why it works, and then you make it better. Critics called it copying. Wei Jianjun called it education. The results spoke for themselves. Great Wall became profitable almost immediately under his leadership. The township government was so impressed that they renewed his contract for another 5 years before the first one had even expired. But then the Chinese government stepped in and tightened regulations around passenger car production for smaller manufacturers. Great Wall was forced to abandon its sedan lineup before 1995. A lesser man would have seen this as the end. Wei Jianjun saw it as a redirect. During business trips to Thailand and to the United States, he had been watching the roads carefully. Pickup trucks were everywhere. In America, the Ford FS series was the best-selling vehicle in the country. In Thailand, pickups dominated the roads. In China, the pickup market was almost entirely controlled by expensive Japanese models produced through state-owned joint ventures. Models that most ordinary Chinese businesses and farmers could not afford. Wei Jianjun saw an enormous gap in the market. In 1996, Great Wall launched the Deere pickup truck. It was based on the architecture of the Toyota Hilux, the most proven pickup platform on Earth. But the price was approximately half of what the Japanese competition was charging, and the quality was genuinely competitive. The Deere sold out. Orders came in faster than the factory could fulfill them. For the first time in its history, Great Wall Motor was not just surviving, it was winning. Wei Jianjun had found his weapon, and he was just getting started. But perhaps the most symbolic moment in Wei Jianjun's entire career came in 2018. That year, he sat down across the table from the executives of BMW, one of the most prestigious automotive brands in the world. A company founded in 1916, a company with over a century of engineering heritage, and he signed a 50/50 joint venture agreement. The result was Spotlight Automotive, created to develop and produce electric vehicles together. The first products of that partnership were the new generation of electric mini models, vehicles carrying one of the most beloved nameplates in British automotive history, now built in a factory in Baoding, China. The boy who drove a Lada around the streets of a provincial Chinese city. And Great Wall Motor is not one brand, it is 5. Haval is the SUV specialist, the brand that conquered China's middle market and now exports to over 170 countries, from Australia to South Africa to Brazil. Tank is the luxury off-road brand, the brand that competes directly with Land Rover Defender and the Mercedes G-Class. Built for people who want genuine capability without apologizing for the price. Dreamed of rally racing, was now co-producing cars with BMW. China did not just catch up with the West. In the hands of men like Wei Jianjun, China sat down at the table, looked the West in the eye, and said, "We belong here." And the world is only beginning to understand what that means.